Ashley Reeves was a 17-year-old high school student from the small town of Millstadt, Illinois. She grew up in a close and supportive family that always put education and personal development first. Her parents, Mary and David Reeves, raised her in a spirit of honesty, hard work, and respect for others. The Reeves family was very close-knit. Mary and David met in college and soon created a warm and loving home for their daughter. David worked for a local construction company, and Mary was a nurse at a local clinic. They often spent time together in nature, participating in the celebrations and events of the city. Little Ashley was the only child in the family. Her parents have always supported her hobbies and aspirations. Their home was filled with laughter, warmth, and joy, and Ashley grew up in an atmosphere where her opinions and desires were important. At school, Ashley was a popular and active student. She was a member of the school board and actively engaged in volunteer activities, helping with local charity events. Her abilities and initiative have made her a favorite among both students and teachers. Ashley was known for her academic achievements. She has always been at the forefront of her studies, especially in biology and chemistry. Her dream was to become a doctor, and she made every effort to achieve this goal. She regularly participated in scientific Olympiads and research, which allowed her to receive a scholarship to study at one of the prestigious universities. Her hobbies were not limited to her studies. Ashley was a passionate athlete and was involved in athletics, especially long-distance running. Her training sessions were intense, but she was happy to endure them. Athletic achievements also contributed to her popularity at school. In social life, Ashley was friendly and sociable. She had a lot of friends with whom she spent her free time. In friendship, she appreciated sincerity and care. Her friends noted that Ashley was always ready to listen and support them in difficult times. They often got together to discuss school events, future plans, and just spend time in each other's company. One of her close friends, Julia, often said Ashley was the best friend you could wish, for they participated in school events together and always supported each other in their studies and personal affairs. Julia remembered how Ashley inspired her to participate in various clubs and events, and how they shared their dreams and plans together. April 27, 2006 was a typical spring day for 17-year-old Ashley Reeves from Millstadt. She woke up early in the morning and was going to school. She had breakfast with her parents and discussed upcoming events. Ashley mentioned that she had some things to do after school, but she didn't go into details. After school, Ashley returned home to get some rest and change her clothes. She had lunch and left the house without stopping, and she never came back.
You guys see anything underneath that?
It's the walk every policeman dreads.
We knew that this was not going to be a happy outcome.
Deep into the dark woods in search of a body.
On April 27, 2006, as the evening turned into night and Ashley Reeves still hadn't returned home, her parents, Mary and David Reeves, began to panic. It was unusual for their daughter. At first, they assumed that she might have unforeseen circumstances or problems, but as the hours passed and Ashley did not show up, their anxiety increased. Mary, sitting by the window and looking out at the darkening sky, felt a growing sense of horror envelop her. She tried unsuccessfully to reach Ashley, but her calls went unanswered. David, on the other hand, was getting more sullen by the hour. He realized that something serious had happened because no one knew where their daughter could be. When night fell, Mary and David, without waiting for an answer, decided to take action. They immediately reached out to Ashley's neighbors and friends, spreading the word about her disappearance. Their voices were full of anxiety, and every response refused to bring relief. The first night after the disappearance was a real ordeal for the family. Mary and David, going over possible scenarios, could not find solace. Every creak in the house and every noise outside gave them false hope. They went all over the house, checking the rooms, with the idea that Ashley might have returned. Mary tried to stay strong, but tears were constantly dripping from her cheeks. David, for his part, didn't know how to deal with the mounting guilt. He told himself that he should have been more careful and warned Ashley about possible dangers. Although he understood that it was not in his power, a feeling of helplessness haunted him. When it became clear that Ashley would not return home, the Reeves family contacted the police. The parents of the missing woman described in detail all the circumstances of the disappearance, including the last place where Ashley was last seen. The police began searching immediately. The first step was to conduct interviews with those who could be connected to her disappearance. The interrogations focused on those who saw Ashley on the day she went missing. as well as her friends, family, and acquaintances. Ashley's parents were the first to be interviewed. They said that the last time they saw her was when she left the house after school. Her parents also provided information about her habits, interests, and possible conflicts that could make a difference. The police then questioned the teachers and students of the school where Ashley studied. They found out that Ashley had a young man named Jeremy Smith, whom she had been dating for 2 years. Jeremy was a great guy and loved his girlfriend very much. The next day, during the interrogation, Jeremy told the police that he did not know where Ashley was because he was in another city that day. According to him, she was supposed to go for an interview and then meet with friends. The guy added that he loves her very much and worries about her. It seemed to the detectives that he was sincere enough. The worried parents couldn't sit still and wait. Ashley's mother took her call history from a call printout and communicated with everyone on the list. Suddenly, she stumbles upon a number that she had not seen before and calls it. The call was answered by a man who said it was a mistake and he didn't know Ashley. Ashley's mother immediately reported the call to the police. It turned out that the police were already aware of this man. One of Ashley's friends said that the two were in a close relationship. The man was 27-year-old Samson Shelton. He was a physical education teacher at the school where Ashley studied. After graduating from college, he worked at 3 schools in the area. He is also a professional wrestler and enjoys playing basketball in his spare time. He lives with his mother and grandmother near the school. The same friend of Ashley's told me that Ashley had romantic feelings for Sam and that she was supposed to meet him that day. At that time, the couple had already been in contact for 2 months. On April 28th, the police took Sam Shelton in for questioning. Shelton appears cool and collected as he arrives at the sheriff's office after coaching high school baseball practice. He was the last person to see Ashley before she disappeared. The police questioned him, and he told them that he had seen Ashley that day. Shelton claimed that there was no romantic connection between them. He wanted to ask her not to call him anymore, after which they broke up and he returned to school. According to him, Ashley seemed to be obsessed with him. His alibi, verified in the early days of the investigation, looked plausible, but the police continued to question him. This led to important changes in the understanding of the case, and later the police were able to find out more about what happened to Ashley on that tragic day. These new details became the basis for further action, and the search for justice became the main suspect in the case of the disappearance of Ashley Reeves. Investigators began the difficult and strenuous work of interrogating him. Shelton was a key link in the investigation, and investigators understood that it was on his confession that the completion of the case depended. Psychological interrogation tactics played a key role in forcing Shelton to confess. The investigators used a deceptive interrogation technique in which they stated that they had irrefutable evidence of his guilt, even if it had not yet been fully collected. They used information about the collected evidence, such as DNA and witness statements, to convince him of the inevitability of exposure. During one of the first interrogations, Shelton began to give contradictory testimony. Although he has not yet admitted his guilt, his answers have become less confident, and investigators have used this as an indicator of his internal conflict. A few hours later, Shelton says that he and Reeves were together on the day she disappeared and that there had been an incident, but swears he did not do anything to hurt the teenager. She was screaming and kicking and everything. So I got her out of the car, shut the door, ran the car, I took off. I left her, said Shelton. I left her there is what I did. I left her out there. I left her right out there. The investigators discussed with Shelton the possible consequences of his actions. They talked about how a confession could mitigate the punishment if he cooperated. This led Shelton to discuss the events more openly, although he had not yet made a full confession. He said, I left her in the woods and drove away. When asked why he didn't call her afterwards, he replied frighteningly, I was scared to call. Suddenly she was hit by a car and she is lying somewhere in a ditch. And then he added, I have a weak stomach. Psychological pressure. The use of deceptive interrogation tactics and continuous conversations about evidence and possible consequences led to Shelton starting to give up his position. He increasingly felt that his attempts to hide the truth were futile. After several hours of intense interrogation and psychological pressure, Sam Shelton finally gave a full confession about what happened on the day Ashley Reeves disappeared. This confession took place against the background of the confusion of his testimony and the increasing pressure from investigators. He began by admitting that he was the last person to see Ashley before she disappeared. He talked about the quarrel that happened between them, but initially did not disclose all the details. Shelton explained that his actions were caused by an outburst of anger. He said that because of his jealousy and resentment towards Ashley, who allegedly cheated on him, he could not control his emotions. According to him, he was under the influence of rage and did not think about the consequences of his actions. Shelton described in detail how he attacked Ashley. He said that at the time of the attack she tried to resist, but he was too strong and did not give her the opportunity to get out. He used strangulation to finally bring her into a state of unconsciousness and left her lifeless body in the forest. I dragged her to a wooded area. I tied this thing around her neck to make it look like someone choked her out there, Shelton tells investigators. I was a nervous wreck, thinking, what do I do? What do I do? I wanted to make it look like she had gotten. She got strangled there in the woods, he says. Shelton says that he then took a belt and repeatedly strangled Reeves, pulling so tight that he broke the belt at one point. All of a sudden I heard like a gurgle. And when I heard the gurgle, I let go. And when I let go, she had like spit, foam, coming out of her mouth. And then I had seen that she was the sickest color I had ever seen, Shelton says. Police have launched a search for the body of Ashley Reeves, but the body was not found, nor were there any signs of decomposition. This made me wonder about the truthfulness of his testimony and whether he was holding her captive, as the investigation continued. And despite Shelton's confession, the main challenge remained for the police to find the body of Ashley Reeves to confirm his words. The police have formed a special search team, including investigators, criminologists, and volunteers, in order to focus on finding the body in the area of the forest indicated by Shelton. The group used advanced technologies and methods for the search, including special search dogs, drones, and detectors. Drones were used to survey the forest from the air. This made it possible to search for possible burial sites or other signs of the body's presence in hard-to-reach places. Special detectors that could detect anomalies in the ground were also used. Search dogs trained to locate human remains were used to scan the suspected area. The dogs were directed to the area where Shelton indicated he had left the body. Their work helped identify potential sites for more detailed study. After a preliminary scan, the team conducted a thorough manual examination of the areas that the dogs and drones had designated as suspicious. Soon the case took a new turn when the family was notified that Ashley had been found and she was in the hospital, in serious condition. Despite the terrible circumstances, Ashley Reeves, who found herself in a critical situation, showed incredible fortitude. When the police, after 2 hours of searching, decided that they had been led on the wrong path, suddenly a young lieutenant discovers the body of Ashley Reeves. But the most unexpected thing was that the body was showing signs of life. She was frozen and covered in insects, so her last agonizing 30 hours passed. When Ashley was found and taken to the hospital, her family was notified. It was incredibly joyful news that brought a sense of relief and hope to the Reeves house. Despite the injuries and the long road to recovery, the fact that she was alive was a great joy for them. Mary and David were shocked and could not believe the miracle that had happened to their daughter. They supported her at every stage of treatment and recovery, although the doctor's forecasts were disappointing. Ashley spent several weeks in the hospital, where doctors treated her physical injuries and provided the necessary rehabilitation. Her treatment included therapy to restore physical strength and treatment of the consequences. She learned to drink and eat all over again, and still remembers how she drank her first sip of water. She was also unable to speak, move her head, and other parts of her body. After a year of severe physical therapy, she managed to fully recover. Her family and friends accompanied her through every stage of her recovery. After her physical recovery, Ashley began psychotherapy to cope with the psychological trauma of the attack. Psychologists worked with her to help her overcome post-traumatic stress disorder and restore mental health. When Ashley Reeves finally returned home after her miraculous rescue, her testimony became a key element of the investigation and trial against Sam Shelton. After regaining her strength and spirit, she shared her memories of that terrible day. Ashley said that on the day she disappeared, she met with Shelton at his request. He was her teacher, and despite their difficult relationship in recent months, she decided that she would break off this relationship. Shelton offered to give her a ride to one of the local parks, where they could have a quiet conversation. Ashley recalled that the conversation quickly turned into a conflict. Shelton began to accuse her of treason and betrayal. At first, Ashley tried to explain herself and smooth things over, but Campbell became increasingly aggressive. At some point, Unable to stand his accusations, she said that there would be nothing more between them and tried to leave. It was at this point that Shelton, according to Ashley, lost control of himself. He attacked her from behind and began to strangle her, while repeating that she deserved to be punished for betraying him. Ashley tried to resist, but his strength and rage were too great. After strangulation, Ashley lost consciousness. She didn't remember being dragged into the woods, but she remembered waking up on the cold ground, completely disoriented and with terrible pain in her body. Her body wouldn't obey, and she could barely breathe. Realizing that she was left for dead, Ashley began to fight for her life. Despite the pain, she tried to crawl, hoping that she could find help. Ashley said that she could no longer distinguish reality from imagination when she heard voices. Gathering her last strength, she made a sound like a scream that attracted attention, and soon Ashley was rescued and taken to the hospital.
Just state your name for the record. Sam Shelton.
That's Sam Shelton, a 27-year-old school teacher who lives with his mom and grandma in the interrogation room, telling cops about his relationship with missing teen Ashley Reeves.
I will say this, we never kissed.
After completing her treatment at the hospital, Ashley returned home. She began to return to normal life, despite the consequences and the need to adapt. Her return was greeted with great joy and support from her family and friends. Sam Shelton was arrested and charged with attempted murder. He returns to the sheriff's office and shares his concerns. Am I going to be able to get my contact solution and take my contacts out and my toothbrush? Shelton asks at one point, expressing his disbelief when he is told he will not get those things. Later he says, am I going to get a little private toilet? Because I can't pee when there is people around because of my urinary stress disorder, Shelton says in the recording. The man who left a teenager alone in the woods to die for 30 hours after a brutal attack tells investigators, because I'll be miserable if I can't pee. The prosecution presented evidence of Shelton's guilt, including his confession, the results of a forensic medical examination, and witness testimony. Shelton's lawyers tried to use his confession as a way to mitigate his punishment. They argued that his actions were the result of emotional stress and internal conflict, and asked the court to take into account his confession and cooperation in sentencing. However, despite all attempts by lawyers, Shelton was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The court decided that his actions were deliberate and especially cruel, which precluded the possibility of mitigation of punishment. Ashley Reeves miraculously survived and returned home. Her life changed dramatically. The girl has a new family in the person of the Millstadt City Police. Every policeman involved in this case remembered this incredible story for the rest of his life. Ashley has overcome numerous physical injuries sustained as a result of the attack, thanks to long and persistent treatment. Her recovery required physical therapy and regular medical checkups, but she was able to return to normal life. Psychological rehabilitation was no less important, but longer. Ashley went through a course of psychotherapy to treat post-traumatic stress disorder and other psychological consequences. Over time, she learned how to cope with stress and emotional trauma while continuing to work with psychologists and counselors.
Requires constant care and physical therapy. Her brain and spine were greatly affected. She has to relearn everything, how to walk, but also how to talk. Ashley has no memory of that evening. She still doesn't understand what happened to her, how Sam, who she considers a dear friend, could have done.
That might not be a good idea, Reeves said in that interview. Today, Ashley is actively involved in community and charitable organizations that deal with violence issues. She has become a speaker at various events and conferences, emphasizing the importance of supporting victims and raising awareness of violence issues. Despite what she has been through, Ashley strives to live a full life. She got married and had 2 children. She maintains close relationships with family and friends, and enjoys her hobbies such as painting and reading. Ashley Reeves' life after the terrible events that happened to her was not easy, but her strength and determination, which helped her survive, also helped her overcome the subsequent trials. She continues to find meaning and purpose in her life, helping others and building a happy future for herself and her loved ones.